Let's return now to our panel. Ebony Bennett is still with us. Also joining us, Terry Barnes, a former Howard Government advisor. Good to see you both. Ebony, we were just looking at the economic impact of coronavirus, added on, of course, to the bushfire situation over the summer. And we know that this is a very difficult position for the government to be navigating. The next step in this, of course, will be the unveiling of a stimulus package, which is going to be crucial for the government to try to get ahead of the economic impacts here. Ebony?
It's actually the March quarter, this current quarter, and the next one where the major impacts from coronavirus and the Black Summer bushfires are expected to hit the economy. You're right that the government's done a good job of managing expectations, and the December quarter figures were better than expected, but the stimulus package is risky for the government. They've spent a lot of time ridiculing the Labor Party for how it managed its stimulus program targeting households during the GFC. So if they don't get this right and the Australian economy does experience negative growth, potentially going into recession, that's a huge risk. So there's a lot riding on getting this stimulus package right, but it's absolutely needed. The RBA cutting rates again shows that monetary policy is almost out of ammunition entirely, and now it's up to the federal government to really boost fiscal policy and stimulus and put that money into the economy to really get growth going.
Terry, a short time ago, he was very keen to stress that this is a targeted package. You know, the government wants us to see differentiation between what Kevin Rudd did in the GFC and now what the Morrison government is going to do. He suggested that the government's looking very closely at a business investment allowance and also at deeming rates, which we know that the government has been under pressure recently to change.
Yes, well, I think what the government's trying to do is actually keep their stimulus response measured and not modest but appropriate. And I think they're very mindful of what happened in the GFC with Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan going very hard, going very fast and going very big. It's caused structural problems for the economy ever since. It's going to be a really tough one politically for them, though, because a recession is actually 2 quarters of negative growth, as I think Ebony was alluding to. And frankly, I don't think government goes into recession in this term. It's probably politically cactus. They know that. After 30 years of economic growth, whoever is in power when we do go into recession is going to take the political hit. So my sense is their politics are being very cautious, but I think the economic approach is actually sensible and measured.
Ebony, when we look at the health impact here, we have seen, of course, developments every day, more cases being diagnosed. Is it fair to say, though, the government has been on the front foot in terms of the health policy we've seen being enacted from the very beginning? We've seen the Morrison government really trying to keep ahead of this.
Yeah, I think it's had to be, given the criticisms of its slow response to the bushfires over summer. But I think the public does get a sense that the government is ahead of this crisis. We've got almost daily announcements now about what to do and travel restrictions and whatnot. But perhaps there's less you might expect, because we've seen things like the panic buying at supermarkets. Woolworths has had to impose a limit on the amount of packets of toilet paper that people can buy. So really, I think controlling panic and making sure that the public doesn't overreact to the actual risk of coronavirus as opposed to the perceived risk in the community. So I think these news of the first community transmissions will be alarming for some, but it's important not to overreact, otherwise we'll exacerbate, I think, both the health problems and the economic problems associated with a pandemic.
Well, Terry, that's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, the message from the government this whole way through has been stay calm, we have this under control, we have policies in place for when and if this gets a lot worse. As someone who's worked in the health policy space, Terry, is there anything else that you would be advising the government to be doing at this point?
Well, I'd certainly keep advising the government to keep... I've got to say, I mean, whatever you think about the politics of this and whatever side of politics you're on, I actually got a lot of time and a lot of respect for the way that Greg Hunt and the Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy, have been handling this. I mean, they've been, as you saw from that press conference, taking all sorts of questions and actually doing their best to keep the things as calm as possible. But the one thing they can't do, the one thing that regulation or legislation or compulsion can't do is change human nature. And certainly the panic buying we're seeing of toilet paper, of all things, is something that I disagree with Ebony. I think that's beyond the government's control, but I think that's something that human nature, being as it is actually reacting to the well, basically the string of bad news on coronavirus we've had over the last month. But, well, reality is that this is a respiratory disease, a respiratory virus. It's not dysentery, it's not diarrhoea. I don't understand why people are actually making a raid on toilet paper above all things.
Into the specifics of that, the advice from the government is there is no need to stock up on toilet paper. Terry Barnes and Ebony Bennett, good to hear your insights on that issue today. Thank you so much for joining us.